All right, what's up, folks? So, Guerrilla Radio episode 2. As I said in 1, Coach Susie's back, and what we're going to be talking about today is kind of a version 2 of something we did, I don't know, 8-9 months ago, where we rolled out the coaching hierarchy, right? So, what we talk about a lot as coaches is what is the role of a coach, and if someone's looking to vet us, kind of, or look at our programs, I want to think about it from their perspective. Like, what am I doing if I'm looking to hire a coach or something along those lines? What is the process with which I would go to choose someone? So what we kind of came up with is this basic approach, this hierarchy. And so step 1 we start with at the bottom of the pyramid is understanding, right? So if you're sitting down with somebody and you're asking them about whatever you're hiring a coach for your finances, for fitness, or whatever it is, do they have an understanding? Do they have experience in the world of getting those results, right? You're not going to hire an overweight personal trainer, right? You're not going to hire somebody that's never done or coach somebody to do what you have done, right? You're not going to hire a broke financial advisor. It just doesn't make sense. So step 1 is understanding and experience. Do they have that understanding of what you need and the experience in helping other people get there? Step 2, do they have a good strategy? I've done tons of videos on this idea that there is no perfect answer, right? The right answer lies on a continuum of trial and error. You may never know what it is right off the bat. So do they have a strategy that's going to build for those eventualities to come up, right? Step 3 is, can they manage that process? So it's one thing to set out a good plan. It's another thing to have hiccups along the ways. And then when we need to, can we call an audible? Can we adjust fire? Can we make a hard right if something isn't working? So that comes back down to the experience, but also the ability to move under fire, so to speak. And then reassess, right? So let's say we put together 4, 6, 8, 12-week plan for whatever it is. You meet the goals that you wanted to meet, or you don't. We then need to have the ability to reassess, right? In the military, they call it AAR, after action review. After the fact, can you sit down, go through the nuts and bolts of what happened, what worked, or what didn't work, and create a new plan, right? So to me, that's the hierarchy of how you would vet somebody, or how I would think about something before I hired a coach. Now, what's separate from that is how we see our roles as coaches, okay? So this is step 1. Step 2 is, how do I see myself as a coach, and what do I think a good coach does? So you want to jump in and talk a little about what you do with your people and what you think a good coaching is?
Yeah, and I think some of it too is how to pick the coach and pick the program. I actually just had a conversation with someone today about that, where they were looking at 2 very different programs. Ours, which is hormone-free, stimulant-free, everything. So we take a very natural approach, which is very similar to what you guys do. So we were talking about that versus doing hormone replacement. And, virtually the meal plans might be the same, but that's very, very different programs. So you have to take a whole step back and go, what's the most important thing you're looking to get out of this? Like, what are you wanting to gain from me as a coach? What are you wanting to gain in, how are you looking to improve your life? And what's the main goal? And that plays a huge role in finding the right coach that's going to, because if we're on 2 separate pages, we're never going to get any end result or any goal. So this kind of, we're going to be on 2, someone's over here and someone's over here going through the program. And so that's a huge part of it is just, and I know you do that with all of your clients too, is what is the main value? Right. Like, why are you working out? Why do you want to reach that goal? What is the overall drive that's getting you there? Yeah.
I think that's good. And I think the way I think about it too, so let's say a decision's been made, someone comes on as a new coaching client, and I look at my role along those lines in threefold, because oftentimes I think people think that a coach is going to have all the answers for every problem that you might have, and in reality, most of the biggest transitions, or I should say breakthroughs, happen when you come to realization on your own. So the 3-step things that I focus on are, first and foremost, clarifying goals, right? People come in sometimes and they have, here's what I want to accomplish. And I was just, Ricardo Semler is a really interesting guy. We'll talk about him on one of the next episodes coming up, but he has this thing, a big business leader down in Brazil. He's done a lot of cool stuff, but he has this 3 whys, right? Always asking 3 whys. And if you can't answer the 3rd why, then we need to do some work. So I adapt that practice, right? If somebody says, I want to lose 20 pounds, well, it's why. Well, it might make me feel good. Well, why does making you feel good about this particular thing, why does that matter? And then go to the 3rd why. And usually that's when you get into that, like you're talking about, the underlying belief. So I clarify those goals, because oftentimes what they say they want, that person wants, isn't what they're really after. So clarify the goals, and then my job is to provide accountability, right? Whether meeting weekly, over the phone, every other month, whatever that is. And then finally, it's just perspective, right? Did we do what we were supposed to do last week? Yes or no. There's no right or wrong. but then let me just provide perspective. And that's where I think the biggest growth comes into play, right? You didn't accomplish your goals, well, why not? Well, my kids or my whatever, all these excuses come up. Well, this is just how you do life, right? So how you doing things, how you do everything. And by asking these questions about providing perspective, you start to realize habits and routines that you stick to that are defeating. So that's the way I look at how I coach people. And the greatest value people get is just from the questions being asked, and then they do their own work in their own head.
Yeah.
And I get so many times when people leave because they're frustrated after, let's say, a bad week or a bad month, and then you have a session where you're providing much perspective. They get upset because they didn't get what they wanted, and then the next time they meet up, like, I didn't realize X, Y, Z, or I wasn't thinking about this at all until those questions were asked of me.
Huge learning experience as a internal, like looking in on yourself.
Totally.
When you have somebody else kind of guiding you through thoughts, guiding you through a process, asking deeper questions. A lot of times, I am sure you do too, clients always say, I learned a lot about myself.
Totally.
How they cope with things, why they do certain things, why they maybe fall back into bad habits. But they start to see patterns that they maybe didn't see before. And then that's when we can actually start to work through them. But we have to, part of it too, and I actually just posted a video on the power of vulnerability, and which is
the
huge.
One?
Yeah, the TED Talk. If you haven't seen it, it's totally worth looking up. I think it's like 20 minutes. It's not that long. But you can only get so far unless you do kind of open up and look a little bit deeper. But you have to be vulnerable in order to do that and really make good change. And so a huge part of it is that too, but the coach has to be there to point you in the right direction and kind of support you and guide you and, and with the accountability as well. Holding someone to it. We can't change it overnight. We have to have time to be able to get through a lot of the stuff that we need to get through. Yeah,
and I think the thing we'll wrap up with is this concept, and I was reading something on project management a while back. The identifier for a good project manager was, at the end of the day, the team will say, we did this all on our own, right? So effectively, you lead a project well, that the team solves the problem. And I kind of think of it the same way in coaching, that at the end of the time, they're going to realize how much of it they did on their own, and that it wasn't, they didn't come to you and I gave the answers, and stuff, they found them on their own.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the ultimate long-term lesson, because then they realize that all the problems you ever need to solve in the future are just internal, and maybe sometimes it's just a sounding board with somebody.
And they're capable of it all.
They're capable of it all. Cool?
Yeah, good.
All right. That wraps up episode 2. We'll see you next time on episode 3.